Hello, today we're going to be discussing composition. So, first of all, what is composition? Every work of art contains art elements, but it's not just what it contains, it's how these art elements are arranged on the page. So we can define composition as the arrangement of these various art elements, such as line, tone, shape, colour, space, etc., in a work of art. We can't just throw the elements down. We have to arrange them to create a meaningful whole. We have to tie all the pieces of the picture together. But what makes a good composition? How do we create this meaningful whole? How do we arrange them correctly to give the best effect? There are certain rules you can follow to have a successful composition, and I'm going to be discussing 3 or 4 of them here today. So the first most important rule, or one of the most important rules, is to simplify. Now, we can simplify and zoom in to emphasize certain parts of a painting, a photograph, a print, etc. In this picture, for example, the photographer may have wanted to emphasize the woman's smile. Originally, there could have been a whole face, but he wanted to emphasize the smile, so he zoomed in, simplified, and just focused on the mouth. Now, it's easy to see how this is a more interesting composition. In this painting here, or photograph, the photographer wanted to emphasize the form of the rose, and as we zoom in, we can see all the intricate folds and creases and tones and the form of the rose. You can see from here how it would be how it's more interesting than it would be if it was a big white space with a small rose in the centre. We get closer and closer till there's nothing else in the viewfinder except for the focus of the subject matter. So here we have musical instruments. The photographer, in this case, he simplified as best he could, zoomed in to the most important aspects. So here we have, looks like a wind instrument, but we don't even have to know what it is. The fact is, it's interesting. And it's a more successful composition, more interesting composition, as it would be had there been the whole instrument, the trumpet, saxophone, whatever. The next rule I'm going to talk about is one of the most commonly talked about rules when we talk about composition. It's the rule of thirds. Now, the rule of thirds is used by splitting the frame up into thirds, horizontally and vertically, and divide the page up, and you can see here how it's implemented here. This panel, this third, if you will, contains the main subject matter, the dog, the footprints, and as we see this line, this dividing line here, the shadow goes along like this, and then the shadow of the body of the dog stops here. And we can see this top third here is taken up by clouds. So it's fairly obvious in this composition how the photographer split the page up and used this grid to arrange the elements and subjects of the photograph. So, which photo do you think makes a better shot from a compositional point of view? Well, we can see how the page is divided up in this one. For instance, if either of these are going to be used in a postcard, you know that this one here is a more successful composition. Now, for someone who doesn't know or doesn't have a firm understanding of composition, they might just know by looking at each of the images which one looks better, but mightn't be able to pinpoint why. But when we split the page up like this, it's easy to see how the photographer in this case followed the rule of thirds here. Where he has the horizon one third from the top of the page, and how he has the flagpole almost at this dividing line here. Now, the rule of thirds is derived from another rule called known as the golden mean. And the golden mean states that the most important subject matters, or the focal point, should be at either of these intersecting lines here. Now, I'm just going to show a couple of examples of the golden mean being used in photography. So, in this first picture here, we can see that the edges of the face are both equidistant from this dividing line here, so that's showing use of the rule of thirds. And since the face is large, it's enlarged, it encompasses both dividing lines here and here. Over here, it's fairly obvious that the golden mean has been used. The circle, the focal point is this window, and it is situated roughly at this dividing line here. These main buildings here that stand out are along this dividing line. It's a similar composition to this one up here, and then here is probably the most obvious, where this is obviously the focal point is created at the 1/3 in, 1/3 down. For landscapes, you can use the rule of thirds. A lot of people tend to keep the landscapes in the center, but you'll get a stronger landscape if you have it 1/3 from the top or 1/3 from the bottom to show either more sky or more foreground. Now, another rule I'm going to talk about is the rule of triangles. You can do a drawing using this kind of composition. The triangle goes from the corner to both of the opposite sides to create a more dynamic, strong image. I'll just show you an example of that being used here. You can see that the graph here, the line follows the graph and then follows the glasses up here. You see how your eyes are guided along the triangle. Now, this is another example of how your eyes can be guided around the picture like this. You can see that the triangles are fairly obviously used here. This is slightly different because it's using right angles. The page is literally split in one straight diagonal line here. Now, here's just a few more examples. We've talked about this one already, but this is another one here. Is fairly obviously right angle composition. It's very easy to see how it's interesting, it's edgy, it's structured, and your eyes guided around the page like this. This photograph here, the wedding photograph, you can see the angle of the veil here, along with this angle here. It's a right angle triangle. It's a fairly strong image, fairly strong composition. Now, it's important to remember to keep it balanced. Finally, I think it's a good idea to include a frame. You can use materials from your foreground and include them in your composition to create a frame effect. We can see here this tree, along with the branches down here, is like a natural frame within a frame. The same with here. We can see 1, 2, 3 edges are taken up with these bushes in the foreground that frame the landscape. Now, so all in all, we've covered what composition is. We've covered the rule of simplifying to give a stronger, more interesting composition. We've covered the rule of thirds, the golden mean, the rule of triangles, and the frame within a frame effect. Now, if there are any questions regarding composition, I'll be more than happy to get back to you and answer any queries. Thank you.